All right, everyone. Hello and welcome in. Thank you for joining me for today's video where we are going to discuss for the first time this season the upcoming 2022 NFL Draft. And what I have for you today is a 7-round mock draft with trades for the Minnesota Vikings as we look ahead to next year. Now, before we get into that, a couple of things to sort of manage expectations here. If you're new to the channel, this is something that we do on a regular basis. I just haven't begun it yet. I'm a little late this year getting around to covering the NFL draft, but it is finally November. I think that this is the right time to do this. So if you are unfamiliar with our draft coverage here, click through the channel, go to the 2021 NFL draft playlist. You'll get a little bit of an idea of what I want to accomplish based on what we did last year. We're going to have player profiles. We're going to do mock drafts, all sorts of things leading up to the actual draft, which will happen. I believe it still happens in April. Anyway. So that is what we have to look forward to in terms of uploading videos to the channel. Also, I understand that there is still a lot of season left. This isn't me writing off the 2021 campaign. We're only at week 10. The Minnesota Vikings are 3-5. The rest of the NFC is pretty terrible. The Falcons right now hold a playoff spot with a 4-4 record. It is entirely possible that the Minnesota Vikings turn the ship around somehow and they wind up in the playoffs and they don't have this exact draft pick that we're going to be talking about today. So everything is going to change. The situation is fluid, but I think that now is the right time to begin doing mock drafts and talking about players because we don't want to experience a crunch time once it gets to January and February where we got to pack a lot of content into a small time frame is basically what I'm trying to get at. The more time that we spend talking about these players, the better understanding that we're going to have about team needs and everything, that has to do with the NFL draft and the Minnesota Vikings when the time comes. So we're going to begin today with a 7-round mock draft, for the Minnesota Vikings with trades. And the reason I'm emphasizing with trades is because right now the current draft pick status for the Minnesota Vikings is close to bleak because there is a wide open gap between, I believe their current pick is 74 and somewhere around 171. So between 74 and 171, there's almost 100 selections that are going to be made before the Minnesota Vikings make another choice. So the Vikings are going to have to trade down in this NFL draft if they don't make any moves prior to it. And that is the Rick Spielman special, which we should be prepared for anyway. So I'm going to make a couple of trades. I've made 3 total trades in this mock draft, and I'm going to begin with our first round selection. I'm going to make 2 trades before we even make our first pick. So trade number 1 is between us and the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns are going to receive the 12th overall selection and pick 171. We, in return, are going to receive pick 17 and pick 48. So I pick up an additional second-round pick just to move back 5 spots. I think that that is pretty good value, so I will go ahead and do that. So after completing the simulation, by the way, which was done on the Pro Football Network mock draft simulator, it's the one that I enjoy using at this moment in time. That will change. Once we got to the 17th selection, I made a second trade with the Kansas City Chiefs. They offered up pick 18 and pick 80. So I said, yes, absolutely. I will take an additional 3rd round selection to move back 1 spot in the first round. So that is where we begin with our 7-round mock draft for the Minnesota Vikings. Round 1, pick 18. And for our first selection, I'm going to select Ahmad Gardner, the cornerback for Cincinnati. And the reason I'm doing this, and people are going to complain like, oh, this is the Mike Zimmer thing where, the Minnesota Vikings just can't help but draft cornerbacks in the first round. And I understand that completely. I'm not doing this with the assumption that Mike Zimmer is still around next year. I'm just doing this under the assumption that we're not going to have very many bodies at the position to begin the next offseason. And we're going to need to fill those because we've lost Jeff Gladney, Mike Hughes, Patrick Peterson is on a 1-year contract. Bashaud Breeland is on a 1-year contract. I highly doubt that he's getting brought back. And then Cam Dantzler is in one of the bigger sophomore slumps that I've ever seen. So we definitely need an influx of talent at the position. And what better way to start that off with arguably one of the top 3 or 4 corners in the NFL draft. The other 2, I believe, being Kaiir Elam and Andrew Booth Jr. from Clemson. So that's where we're going to begin. We're going to begin on defense. Let's go over to the second round where we now have 2 picks at 43 and 48. For the round 2 pick 43 selection, I am going to take Carson Strong, quarterback from Nevada. And you may be already hating this draft right off the bat, but let me explain. So yes, last year we did draft Kellen Mond in the 3rd round. he is a project quarterback. We have to be honest with ourselves here. I don't think that we should go into next season hoping that he is the savior. Whether or not we keep Kirk Cousins for an extended period of time, maybe 1 more year, 2 more years, whatever the case may be, we need to start taking advantage of the quarterback situation that is the NFL draft, because it seems like up until last year we have been just ignoring that. So I don't want another year of Trevor Siemian being the backup for Kirk Cousins. You bring in a veteran if you want to, but I think Carson Strong, as being the best quarterback left on the board at the time of the selection, isn't a bad idea, because my philosophy has always been draft a quarterback every year until you hit. And I'm suspect that Kellen Mond is going to be a hit. I don't know how that one's going to turn out. So I'm going to use a little bit more draft capital this year, go after another quarterback with a different skill set, see how it works out in the preseason. Moving on to our second round pick 48, we're going to go with the offensive line because I'm tired of dealing with the interior that we currently have. I'm going to select Ed Ingram, the guard from LSU. And once I make my next selection, I will explain that one. So jumping ahead to round 3, pick 74, I am going to select at this spot Alec Lindstrom, the center from Boston College. So we took Ed Ingram with our second round selection, and then we're taking Lindstrom with our third round selection numbers. So we have a new guard, we have a new center. Here's my vision for the offensive line after these 2 selections. Garrett Bradbury, he's gone. Goodbye. We're not picking up your 5th-year option. You're a bust. You have proven that you are incapable of handling the center duties at the NFL level. You'll make a good backup somewhere. More power to you. Have a good career. Mason Cole is not the long-term answer at this position, despite how there was no drop-off in his performance when he had to play for the Ravens. So we need an upgrade at the position. Other than Tyler Linderbaum from Iowa, who we're not going to get because he's going to be drafted way higher than this. I believe he's from Iowa. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is the next best option. Boston College produces good offensive linemen. I think he's related to Chris Lindstrom, who is one of the guards for the Atlanta Falcons. So we've got the bloodline there. And then we go with Ed Ingram, the guard from LSU. This allows us to move away from Ali Udo, Dakota Dozier, the Drew Samias of the world. And then we get to put Ed Ingram in at the right guard position, or the left guard position, excuse me. Hopefully by this time, Wyatt Davis is ready to play. He'll take over right guard. So our offensive line from left to right will be Darisaw, Ed Ingram, Alec Lindstrom, and then we have Wyatt Davis and Brian O'Neill. So that would be the offensive line for 2022. This allows us to get rid of Rashad Hill. We can move Ezra Cleveland to the swing tackle, jack of all trades, master of none position, where he can fill in just about anywhere on the offensive line. And that would be my vision, to rebuild the offensive line in one off season, and that's where I would put everyone. Next, we have another trade. The Minnesota Vikings trade with the Cincinnati Bengals. I didn't write down what those specifics were. I will put those up on the screen, but do know that what I'm doing is I'm trading down 2 spots. So I originally had pick 80 in the 3rd round. Now I have pick 82. And with the round 3 pick 82 selection, I'm going to take Brandon Smith, the linebacker from Penn State. My thought process behind this is Anthony Barr is likely walking at free agency. I don't know what the contract status of Nick Vigil is going to be beyond the season. Chaz Surratt seems to be like a serious project rookie because he's been active a couple of weeks. And then I think maybe the team might be ready to move off of Troy Dye after a couple of years in the system. So, and the linebacker depth never hurts. It never hurts based on what we've seen these past couple of years. Moving on to round 4, our next selection will be pick 136 after I've made all of these trades. For round 4, pick 136, I'm going back to the cornerback well, because as I said, we're just probably going to need bodies for this position. I'm going to take Kyler Gordon, the cornerback from Washington, to help address the influx of youth at the position this year, because remember, all the analysis that I said about Ahmad Gardner being the first selection for us in the first round also applies to this pick as well. We move, we don't have a 5th round pick in this scenario. Round 6, pick 184, I'm going to select Arnold, and I hope I'm saying this right, Ebikite. I'll work on the pronunciations later. The edge rusher from Penn State, so I'm going back to the Penn State well. Thought process behind this is Danielle Hunter's future with the Minnesota Vikings is questionable. I don't know how many more years Everson Griffin has if they'll bring him back. Remember, he's only on a 1-year contract. DJ Wanham, I don't think is going to pan out like people were hoping for. How much can you really expect to get out of Kenny Willeks, Patrick Jones, Janarius Robinson, who hasn't played this year? So I think we need at least one more body at the edge position. Hopefully I'm wrong and Danielle Hunter stays. I don't know what his future is after 2 season-ending injuries, but we'll see. It doesn't hurt to get depth at this point in the NFL draft. Next, we're staying in round 6, pick 196. At this selection, I am going to take Dontario Drummond, the wide receiver from Mississippi. This is nothing more than a depth selection, as I believe we'll be officially moving on from BC Johnson, Chad Beebe. Their careers in Minnesota are likely over. Get another player behind Amir Smith-Marset in case that he doesn't develop into anything more than a special teams contributor, which, the jury is still out on him. So wide receiver from Mississippi is the pick. And then, finally, to wrap things up, in round 7, pick 237, taking a flyer on a player that had a father play in the NFL, was fairly successful, that being Joey Porter Jr., cornerback from Penn State. He is the selection here at the end of the Vikings draft for this mock scenario. Just taking a flyer. And as I've said before, it's likely that we're going to need bodies at the cornerback position for the foreseeable future, given the contract status for everybody currently on the roster, and the fact that I don't think we're going to bring back Rashad Breeland. That's just my opinion. So those are the draft picks. A little recap before we go. Ahmad Gardner is the first selection, pick 18 in round 1. Follow that up with Carson Strong, quarterback from Nevada, Ed Ingram, the guard from LSU, Alec Lindstrom, the center from Boston College, Brandon Smith, linebacker, Penn State, Kyler Gordon, corner at Washington, Arnold Ebikiti, I hope I'm saying that right, edge from Penn State, Dontario Drummond, wide receiver, Mississippi, and Joey Porter Jr., the corner from Penn State. That's going to do it for this first 7-round mock draft of the Minnesota Vikings. This won't be the only one. We'll do different scenarios with no trades, can't take this position, offense only, a whole bunch of different things, just to start conversations about team needs, the players that are going to be available, and the different options that the Minnesota Vikings can do as an approach or scheme to the upcoming NFL draft for 2022. So that's going to do it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.